Shallow Chell here. It's taken a little bit of work to get this interview together with my very good friend John Armfield, Navy clearance diver, 20 years, defence veteran advocate, whistleblower at the Defence Royal Commission into the systemic bureaucratic failures within our military establishment. John tragically lost his brother some years ago in the military, and this conversation goes deep into some of the pain that he's felt, the things that he saw and experienced, as well as the positives for the future. John's running as a candidate for the People First Party under Gerard Rennick for the seat of Fadden in Queensland, the federal seat, and we certainly wish him the very best of luck. I believe that he would be a great MP and certainly the type of Australian that we need to see in Parliament these days to fight the blob. I hope you enjoy this interview.
Hi guys, Senator Rennick, People First Party. I just want to lend my support to one of our candidates for People First, John Armfield from Fadden. He's a fantastic candidate. He has a career in community service. Obviously, he spent a number of years in the Navy as a bomb specialist, and he's also served in the life-saving clubs on the Gold Coast for a number of decades as well. He's happily married as a family man, and I know that his dedication and his loyalty to this country is unquestioned, and that's why I was pleased to be able to offer John the opportunity to run for Fadden. He's very committed to his country. As he said, he doesn't want to be a politician. He wants to be in the service of the public, so I'm very pleased to recommend him and endorse him for the seat of Fadden. And I hope that you enjoy the interview and the conversation that he has with Scott Shallon, another great patriot as well, and enjoy the interview. And by all means, if you want to help out at People First, please hop on to www.peoplefirstparty.au. Thanks for your support, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you, John, is you've decided to run for People First, which is Gerard Rennick's party. Obviously, he's the head of the party. And you've got a long history in the Australian military. You're a well-known local advocate for veterans. And, mate, you made a real name for yourself when you exposed what was essentially a ridiculously dirty and corrupted almost situation within the military around your own family and your own circumstances. It's been some time since that happened, and you've had some time since then. Tell us a little bit about where you are now and why you're doing what you're doing, mate.
Scotty, the ADF left me as a broken man, and I had to try and piece my life back together. They admitted culpability. They admitted to the failings resulting in my brother's death. They admitted to the failings resulting in the loss of my career. 5 days before they kicked me out medically, they said, John, errors occurred and they kept occurring. If those errors didn't occur, you'd still be serving. And I said, reinstate me, stop my medical discharge. To which they're like, but look at the state you're in. And I'm like, sir, you've just apologized for putting me in this state. You took my brother, you guys covered it up for 10 years. If there's no Royal Commission, I don't find out about this. And mate, someone who served loyally, and I loved it. I was proud to serve my country. The systemic corruption I identified, I couldn't let that go. And, having lost my mother and my father, and being the oldest, I sort of felt it was my responsibility to do something.
Yeah.
I've sat through suicides of my mates. I've sat through the funerals, the ramp ceremonies overseas. And I just didn't see anyone taking a stand. So I spoke at the Royal Commission in 2024. There's a lot of media articles out there. I spoke on a current affair. I spoke on a couple of podcasts, military-based podcasts. And, mate, the people coming out of it asking for help at the moment, I was speaking to Senator Rennick about this the other day, and he promised me that we'll get on top of this and he'll help me. But I've got nothing left to lose. And so when I did ask for help and the ADF, the chain of command, wouldn't legally, it's very expensive. I didn't want to go down the potential of going against the ADF.
Yep.
As you know, serving, their greatest risk is risk to reputation. That's what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about war, not concerned about capability. It's their reputation. So I thought I'd target it. And so I've created a YouTube channel. I've got a couple of videos up, and I've got some momentum. And so when everything fell apart, I found myself in politicians' offices,
Yeah.
and I was begging them for help. And some of the parliamentarians were great. I reached out in September 22 to both my local member, who was Liberal, Peter Dutton as well, and I reached out to Matt Keogh. Peter Dutton got back to me in days. Stuart Robert got back to me within a week, met with me. They both, him and Peter, escalated to Barnaby as Shadow Veterans Affairs and Personnel Minister. But mate, Matt Keogh responded, and he's in his response on the 27th of July 23. He said, "Thank you for your letter in September 22."
Wow.
Wow. And mate, so when people ask me, well, who do you align with? I align with people who treat the other human beings, other Australians, with
Yep.
respect. So I found myself going down the Liberal path. I joined the Liberal Party because of the
Right.
support they'd given me, and also being a serviceman. Most service people, ADF personnel, were voting Liberal.
Yep.
A bit more conservative values. And then I was lucky enough to meet Senator Gerard Rennick. He really he touched me with what he was doing. A lot of his language was
Yep.
very passionate, and I want to fight. And he was taking on let's call it the elites,
Yep.
within the Australian bureaucracy. And then Gerard left the Liberal Party, so I followed Gerard and offered to do some volunteering in the veterans issues. And to all the veterans out there, I've had a few reach out asking how I could do that. If you go to I said to one young lady, find your local member of parliament, federal, go in, say you're a veteran, say you want to work in veteran issues in a volunteer capacity, they'll give you the work.
Yeah.
I'm nothing special, Scotty, you know. I'm a sailor. And
Right.
So Gerard gave me that opportunity. And that's all I wanted, was to be able to help other veterans. And it was also very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
But mate, some of the stuff that's come out is pretty massive. With Gerard and I've been able to help a couple of veterans. And then I started touring with Gerard when he was doing his speaking tours around Queensland, and I ended up really getting more involved in the party and the politics.
Yeah.
To the point he said to me, "Would you like to run as a candidate?" And I said, "Gerard, I'll follow you and do whatever you want. I can be your driver. I can be your bodyguard. I can work veterans issues." And that's the sort of person he is. He's
Yeah.
definitely, you can tell he's a country boy.
Yeah.
Which I love their values.
Yeah.
You can tell he's patriotic about the country. And mate, not having a father, he's not that much older than me, so I've got to be careful what I say. But I'm very passionate. I got very upset when Adam Bent earlier in the year removed the Australian flag from the press conference.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a minute, mate.
Oh.
That's absolutely something I want to cover. Just going back
Yeah.
a second there, mate, is like with regards to Gerard and your feelings about him and the party. There's some people that you meet, and with your extensive military career, yes, there's some people that you meet that you know are 100% genuine, and you would follow them into hell if they asked you to do it, because that's how they inspire you. And that's certainly, mate, I've got to tell you, like, my personal feelings about Gerard. He's one of those guys that you sit there for 5 minutes and you talk to him, and you know that you're talking to someone who speaks to you from the heart. And so for him to have asked you to step up means he obviously sees the same thing in you, mate.
Mate, you know, and Scotty, and you've served, there's two types of leaders. There's those that lead from the front and those that manage you from behind.
Yeah.
And everything I've seen with Senator Rennick is from the front. It's follow me, John. And he's constantly led. He's never backed down. He's asked all the mainstream media for opportunities to debate anyone.
Yeah.
No one will take him up. Anyone who offers Gerard an opportunity to speak, he will speak.
Yeah.
And he believes in what he's doing. And coming from the military, I like a leader that leads from the front. I like a man with conviction and values and knows who he is. And I like someone who cares about his troops. And I'm one of the troops. And And even, I guess, more important about Gerard, Scotty, is the first day I went into the office to volunteer, the entire team had been briefed on who I was, my Royal Commission, the current affair, what I was about. And there was a team there. There was Linda had done 51 years and the LNP had followed Gerard over. So that says a lot about his character and his
Yep.
integrity. And the first thing the girl said to me is, "We're all fighting for something here, John. You're going to fit in." And mate, it was surreal. It
Yep.
was,
And
and we've got
also, like,
just a
how
great team.
inspiring is it to finally see a politician? And we've got a couple of good ones in Australia. I'm not going to say they're all bad, but I didn't know Gerard from a bar of soap until I met him at the LNP convention, and we had a chat. And much like yourself, mate, I'm talking about the building industry and my experience in it, and what I'm seeing is systemic failures within government that's creating these crises around the country. You've seen these endemic and systematic failures within the military that are creating these crises internally. I don't think government can touch anything at the moment without fucking it up in some way, shape, or form. And then I look at guys like Rennick who speak truth, and mate, they get shut down. Like the party just tried to shut him down and get him out, mate. And ever since the COVID kickoff, I think the government's doubled down so many times now on bad decision making that it's like they take a magnifying glass and they're experts at making it even worse and worse and worse. No doubt you've seen that yourself, mate.
Mate, there just seems to be no actual consideration or care or compassion for the Australian public. And you're also seeing that those through our senior leadership in the ADF, right?
Yeah.
In exactly similar circumstances, there is no concern for the enlisted personnel. And it's something happening in those elite levels, where there's something driving their actions, right? Because you don't treat people the way that the people in Fadden, the people in Australia, the taxpayers are being treated. But you also don't treat
Sorry,
you don't treat defence personnel the way I've been treated. Um, and there's a disregard from those in power for the people. And it's a really, I was speaking to some constituents the other day. I said, You've all forgotten that the elected representatives serve you, and you are the people who put these people in power. You've now got to tell them. You've actually got to face them and say you represent us, and that's the same in the ADF as well. Our leaders need to take responsibility and accountability for their actions. It's just not happening, Scotty.
you joined the ADF in 2002, was it, John, or 2003?
2003,
How
Scotty.
old
Yeah,
were you then? How old were you then, mate?
27.
Yeah, well, you were actually a little older for most guys, mate, when they were joining.
Yeah,
And so you'd
yeah.
had a bit of life experience and been around the traps. And look, don't have anything to compare to you, but I was 26 when I joined the Air Force as well. So on recruit training, mate, I was one of the oldest guys there and probably the slowest as well, I might add. But, you were older, you had experience, you'd already worked, you joined this organisation. How different it was the 2003 version of the Defence Force to the one that you left?
Mate, when I joined in 2003, all I ever wanted to be was a chief clearance diver. A chief, and it didn't matter if it's a clearance diver, but all chiefs, the senior enlisted in the ADF, were treated with respect.
Yeah.
And we looked up to them, mate. And the enlisted looked up, but also the officers, especially the junior officers, would fall back on the knowledge, the expertise of these individuals who've served 20 to 30 plus years, right? Yeah. A lot of that's operational too. So, when you got a junior officer or a junior enlisted, these were the people we went to for guidance and also to lead us. And then when I left in the end, it's sort of become quite weird that the commissioned ranks show no respect to the senior enlisted. And that's a massive downfall because it's the senior enlisters that primarily lead you on deployments, right? Yes, the lieutenant commander or the army captain will be there, but most of the time they're back at the forward operating base. So they don't leave that wire, right? In the majority of circumstances. So when I was in Afghanistan, yes, we've got an army major. Yes, we've got a WO, but the senior guy on the ground was the sergeant, So these are the people who know how things actually operate. They're at the coalface, and we've taken away any credibility of these individuals, and that's why you're probably seeing a mass exodus right now. Like, primarily every clearance diver I know that served on in Afghanistan and definitely Iraq, they're all out,
Yeah.
except maybe two or three out of 50 plus, and those guys now are in, say, the warrant officer positions, or maybe one's a chief. So
Yeah.
they're no longer really at that operational coalface.
Yeah.
So, and saying that, I speak to a lot of the army mates I know that I've deployed with. They're all getting out, or they've gotten out already. So it's sort of, now I look back, when I joined in '03, there was so much experience. And as I come through the rank, there was Timor veterans, there was
Yeah.
Iraq veterans, there was Afghan. And I had great role models and coaches and mentors.
Yeah.
But I can say now, what you've got there is that people have gone through their basic training, gone through a peacetime military, and they've got none of that expertise to fall back on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because we've lost so many people. I heard from someone connected to recruiting a couple of weeks ago that we lost 5,000 serving members last year. I don't know how accurate that is, and if I'm incorrect, someone's going to fact check me in the comments here anyway. But that number probably didn't surprise me based on what I'd heard around the place, mate.
No, mate. I think when I left in 23, I think in that 1 month of March, we lost a warrant officer, chief petty officer, and two petty officers, including me.
Yeah.
That out of that one job category in 1 month.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot of and
Years of
all
experience.
experts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, mate, the warrant officers probably got 30, the chiefs around 30, they're 60, the two POs are 20. There's your 100 years gone in 1 month.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And so where your career ended up and where you ended up in the position that you were, you could never have expected that when you joined. I mean, the story and where your life and your career headed, it's hard for anyone to fathom. You found yourself in royal commissions, media interviews, in front of the top brass, in front of politicians. Like, it's been a heck of a journey. When's the book come out, John?
Mate, the book, thank you for the plug. Hopefully soon.
Yep.
I just
I'm hoping
I've put
there's
everything,
a story that's being written here, mate, about this, because it needs
there is, mate, and it's leadership failure. That's the story of the book. Mate, funnily enough, I was lucky in the last couple of months to go to Canberra and meet Hugh Pote, who lost his son Robbie in Afghanistan, and he wrote the book Failures of Command, and it's a great book for anyone out there, and it goes deep into the systemic issues of the government and the ADF leadership. My book's slightly different, coming from my approach being the person on the ground. Very similar, but mate, right now I'm trying to run for Gerard and support Gerard with this election. But mate, since I've sort of got more media and public traction, and you and I are talking about this today, Scotty, and I was speaking to Senator Rennick about this. I was getting 5 to 10 messages from individuals who are serving or just gotten out that need help right now. So that's taken sort of my primary concern is how do I offer these individuals support? And I opened the can of worms. I'm quite aware of that, so I've got to be able to deal with it. I've really got no mechanism in place yet, and it's something that Gerard's trying to help me with. But I'd really like to be able to offer the veterans and not even just veterans, sorry, but still serving enlisted personnel the support. And my gut instinct, and I've got a good friend, Catherine, that you've met, who's running for Blair for Senator Rennick. Catherine was, funnily enough, she was my Royal Commission lawyer. That's how we met.
Wow.
Amazing lady, mate. Also, former Army nursing officer.
Yeah.
Had her own issues with the ADF that are not my place to talk about, but it drove her to studying law, getting out, and now advocating for veterans. So we're in the middle at the moment, Catherine and I, trying to have a veteran-centric policy that we'd like to pitch to Gerard. But Catherine's expertise was working for Defence and Veterans Legal Service and the Royal Commission and providing an independent legal authority to gain the veteran or the enlisted people justice. And I think that's the problem, Scotty, is everyone I'm speaking to within the system cannot get justice.
When you gave evidence at the Royal Commission, hugely powerful, intimate, and would have been hard to relay as well. What do you think is stopping the culture from changing? That's holding back the ability to rectify the issue that's in there at the moment.
Scotty, it's almost like it's a protection racket, right? Because I clearly identified to both warrant officer, geez, I got tongue twisted, warrant officer of the Navy and to the Chief of Navy in person of the failings of what both the Royal Commission and Defence's own lawyers had identified, as well as so every sort of step I took, Scotty, I used legal advice, and some of it was Defence's.
Yep.
They identified the breaches of privacy, the breach of the Privacy Act, specifically APP 11. They identified the breaches of fraud, the fraud issues. And Defence was forewarned on all this. But at all times, a commander and lieutenant colonel in particular, they were given legal advice from Defence that I presented in a record of conversation, so it was all recorded. They then decided to ignore that advice, that legal advice, and go and do their own investigations, and then provided reports to the Joint Military Police Unit that I was unqualified and unauthorised to access defence objective systems.
So at that point, they were trying to assassinate your character.
And also, I was told I was now facing serious criminal charges, right? So, all for being really what I guess in the scope of it was a whistleblower.
Yeah.
But Scotty, what I missed initially, because I thought the organisation would help me,
Yeah.
was I was given the report of my brother's death on the 16th of August 21. I received that through registered post. You and I both served. I've never received any official correspondence through Australia Post. This should have been the first red flag. The second red flag is I went into the chain of command on the next day and I asked for help with that report. I was told that was for the Royal Commission. So from the 16th of August 21 to the 5th of May 23, not one commissioned officer would sit down and read that report. No one would even touch it.
That's unbelievable. I find that stunning. But everything about your story is stunning, mate, because the levels of failure, and I'm going to almost put my finger on it and call it corruption at this point within this government agency, is so deeply entrenched that level of neglect and time frame just goes to show how they operate now.
And it is, Scotty. And when I speak to people, the Australian taxpayer, I go out and speak to small business, farmers, the homeless, the tradesmen, and everyone feels that they're not being heard, that the government's corrupt. There's no consideration, whether you're talking COVID lockdowns, mandatory vaccines, people today, the amount of tax they're paying for no return.
Yeah, record levels of personal income tax, as well as multi-layered levels of bureaucracy at local, state, and federal council. My listeners have heard me bang on about this for the last 18 months now, because I'm watching small businesses being gutted left, right, and centre. But not just small businesses. We're talking families, mate, that are losing homes. We've got people living under tents all the way between here and Brisbane and the Gold Coast, where you are now, mate. We've got tent cities under bridges. And we've got defence veterans that are living in some of those tents, mate. You know that. And so we've got a system that doesn't look after its people properly, and a government that doesn't function properly. And you're a perfect example of the degradation of that system for the last 20 years. It's more.
And Scotty, we're an energy superpower.
100%.
Like, we've got so much land,
power.
So much resources. We've got it.
Yeah.
And yet the Australian person, every Australian should be able to have a roof over there.
Where is it?
But mate, as Gerard says too, right, if we look at everyone looks at resources, but Google, Apple, all the big social media, no one's paying the taxes here.
You know it, man.
So
I'm just going to shift all this profit to Ireland, right? And run my business out of there. Same as the pharmaceutical companies during COVID. I don't want to sound like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, but Gerard's already exposed all of this to the general public.
Yeah.
most of the media just wanted to go, mate, we're not going to talk about that. We don't want to touch that. But we're talking about billions and billions of dollars in revenue that we don't collect taxation on because our government is letting this money just slide straight out of the country. You know.
And mate, you and I discussed this. You know, is it corruption or is it just stupidity? But there's so many layers of failing. It's, you know, the environment, immigration, taxes,
Yeah.
what we're doing across the board, the ADF, you know.
You would have seen this too in military procurement. Like, I mean, there's people out there that are watching this now that have been watching this, and if you don't mind me touching on the subs for a second, right? But we've watched this debate since the Collins class. We've watched this story for so long now, and especially those of us that have kept up to date with what goes on in the military. We are so shit at buying anything and doing anything. Where does all the money go, and how do we manage to screw this up so bad? You know,
Scotty, the one thing there's a lot of positives from a military career, and I speak to different people, and I was asked on the weekend, what can we do? And everyone's got an idea to improve everything. But in the military, we focus on a strategy. What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to achieve it? So when I look at the subs, and there's a great book that I tell everyone about. You White wrote How to Defend Australia, and we didn't, did we? It's not that I believe what we do and don't need, but what is the capability that Australia required from a submarine?
yeah,
Did we need a sub that could go all the way to China undetected?
yeah.
I don't believe we did.
Okay.
We needed subs that could protect us and the Pacific Islands, you know.
Yeah.
And you White talks about we needed small subs, we need sea mine capability, which I believe we bought $1 billion worth of sea mines, but where are they? You know, so
How do we deploy them? Like, how does that work?
well, mate, exactly.
Yeah.
So
What's that book
everything's
called?
being
I'd like to
tied into
check that
these
book out.
subs.
What's that book called, mate?
How to Defend Australia.
Yeah, okay. You'll check that one.
It's you White. I'll find it and send you a copy,
Yeah,
Scotty.
yeah. And so
It's amazing.
we you know, the Greens, as much as I despise the Greens, don't get me wrong here. Adam Bandt, an interview on the weekend with the ABC insiders, was talking about the waste that AUKUS is, the amount of money that we're spending on this thing for something that's so far down the track from here. But this is a debate that we've been having for, you know, over 15 years now about which way we're going to go with these subs. And it's another classic case of us just writing huge checks for things that we don't see for such a really long time in a really fragile geopolitical environment. And Australia's a really exposed place. They've just lost a huge amount of service people with a history and an understanding of how the military works. And it feels like, as a citizen outside of here, we're in a more vulnerable place than we've potentially ever been, mate, especially when you hear how they've treated people like yourself.
Mate, and I believe we are, right? There's a lot of experts out there, and some of those guys have got a lot of highly reputable, right? And I think you White he served under 2 prime ministers.
Yeah, right.
He was the defense advisor, and he's also he's actually higher than a professor at one of the unis, an emeritus professor. So he talks about, you know, again, the why and what are we trying to achieve? Are we aligning with America, which, you know, I've served with America in a lot of deployments.
Yeah.
We do all the international exercises with the Americans. I've got a lot of American military friends, and I love them, and they're very patriotic. But from a government perspective, are we aligning with America? And that's got to be the first question, because are we buying now American subs that we can't really interoperate with America? And I only read an article before we started chatting, that by 2027, before Virginia class subs based at HMAS Sterling.
Yeah.
So
sorry, was
we're
that
going down that
2037?
path.
Was that 20?
No, 2027.
2027.
It'll be American subs, but they won't be ours.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now all the rhetoric is we're going away from America. So you need to have a strategy, and I think that's where Australia, within the military and the government, keeps failing on everything. Is what are we trying to achieve?
Well, we haven't quite worked out how to deal with America's Trump yet, with the American Trump. So until we work that shit out, mate, it's always going to be a bit of a shit fight. I think when it comes to defence procurement and what it looks like defending Australia, especially longer term.
I think the hard thing is, I think everyone's got an opinion on Trump's personality. It doesn't help when we've got Malcolm Turnbull, Kevin Rudd, Albanese, the Greens. You do not mess with maybe not, but it's history proves
Yeah.
they are our superpower ally.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing to me to watch how badly these people misunderstand his personality and the ability to try and negotiate with this huge superpower that we're super reliant on down here. And we should be great partners with the US. I think there's great value to it. But they have no idea how to communicate with this type of alpha male. Like they're completely lost, mate.
And mate, people got to remember as well, we've got the Marines already stationed in Darwin.
Yeah.
We've got Lone Pine.
Yeah.
You know, which is obviously probably one of the most valuable assets to Western militaries, right?
Yeah.
Is Lone Pine. With over the horizon with what they do.
With Pine Gap, you mean, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Pine Gap. So we are already structured. The LHDs were designed to interoperate with the American battle groups.
Yeah.
So, because we don't need LHDs on our own, and people will go, oh, but we could use them for humanitarian aid. Guys, we don't need to focus on humanitarian aid right now. We need to focus on lethality and combat and warfare.
Yeah.
Because we sail 2 LHDs out, we actually need, how many frigates do we need to support them? You know,
yeah, that's
it's
what
massive.
People forget, mate. It's not just that one thing. It's a fleet of things around it that support it, right?
Yeah.
The logistics that all come in behind that. It's a strange structure for a defence force. I've always found it interesting. I heard a really good explanation that it's a boutique defence force. We've got a very boutique little defence force. It does its thing, and we're really, really good at that thing that we do. But in the event of major crisis, and if we had to escalate really, really quickly, you've seen it, I've seen it. From the inside, you go, shit, we'd probably last about 3 weeks. Like it's actually, people would be quite surprised how much depth we don't have. But I mean, I'm no expert on this, but it's just from the observations, of course.
And Scotty, and yeah, but when you listen to some of the people, I listened to John Howard and John Anderson, so former Prime Minister and former Deputy, in a podcast talking, and they were talking that everyone's concerned about climate change, right? And John Anderson goes, hey, that's cool, you got that, but what's right in front of you? And that's what the military does, right?
Yeah.
We deal with the threat right in front of us. We don't look sideways.
Yeah.
And the big one, John Anderson saying, is war. And, sorry, excuse me. So, and he goes, we don't even need a war to compromise our trade routes. We have 0 Australian international cargo ships, right?
Yeah.
Which I never knew. And he's talking about.
Yeah, we have no merchant navy of any description really at all anymore.
Nothing. No, so maybe that's what our LHDs will be doing, right?
Yeah, potentially.
Navy, I don't know.
Cargo up the east coast of Australia, mate. But where's our? If I could touch on another point there, where's our strategic petroleum reserve? It's in the US. Where's our gold? Now Rennick's been on this point. He's been hammering it so hard, doing such a good job of it. Where's our gold? It's in the UK. I'm failing to understand how we have a $2 trillion economy. We're one of the largest resource miners on the planet. We export more coal than any other country. But we have 0 depth in capacity to even power anything here for more than 30 days if the shit hits the fan. And I don't think people realise how vulnerable we are in that situation. Why is the gold in the UK? I mean, I can't make sense of that. Gerard couldn't make sense of that in estimates either. You know.
No, mate. Especially when we are as secure as the UK to store our gold.
Yeah.
Like, if not more secure.
Yeah.
So, and mate, going back to the fuel, I think John Howard and that was saying we've got 21 days currently.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 90.
Yeah.
So, and then people don't understand when I talk to them about our trade routes and supply chains being our biggest threat, because you just have to look at the COVID, the issues with, say, over toilet paper. You have to look at we didn't even get hit by a cyclone on the Goldie
Yeah,
because
mate.
it ended up being a low pressure storm, but we were out of everything.
Yeah,
The
same
shop
here in
shelves were
Brisbane, mate.
bare.
And look, I'll be honest with you, I had people contacting me saying that they were having traumatic anxiety going to the shops and reliving COVID all over again from 2020.
Yeah.
Going, the shelves are empty. You know, like, how is this possible again? We're doing, how many more once in a lifetime events can we do here? You know, the North Queenslanders must have been pissing themselves laughing at us, mate, down in Brisbane.
Mate, there's a lot of criticism right now of Trump on tariffs. And, you know, People First is a protectionist party. And I was speaking to some nurses the other day. They said, well, John, we don't even produce saline and it's salt water. Yeah, it's processed.
Yeah.
But if our trade routes were compromised,
Yeah.
or even greater, it was China that was doing it,
Yeah.
where most of our
medicines,
import most of our
pharmaceuticals.
products.
Yeah.
Mate, we've got nothing. We don't have saline.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So people go to me, oh, you know, Trump's bringing in tariffs. Tariffs are a negative. I'm like, okay, but how do we then create our own industry?
I think
And
everyone's forgotten that it was tariffs that built these great Western societies that we live in. It really was. And when you go back and look at former prime ministers, presidents, UK, Australia, New Zealand, almost every single one of them was a protectionist at some stage because they understood the value of defending their own industries. And I'm in the building industry where almost 95% of everything that goes into your house material-wise is imported from another country. Now, you know, Australia's largest brick manufacturer announces that it's going to be importing bricks from the US because it can buy electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt over there. And it can't afford the electricity prices in Australia. We're not even going to make fucking bricks here, right? Like, so you try and get your head around the concept of shipping millions of tons of bricks from the US to Australia to be able to build homes for our people here. And none of that fits. None of it makes any sense whatsoever. So I think I'm a big fan of protectionism. I believe that we should be supporting Australian industries wholesale. There shouldn't be any doubt about that. The free trade agreements that we have should only be with countries that we have a defence pact with. And that's it. If we have a defence agreement with you, we will have free trade with you. It's as simple as that. But anyone else, mate, I say shut the gate. You know, shut the gate. People go, oh, it's going to push the prices up. It's going to make everything too expensive. Yeah, but at what cost are we currently undermining our own societies now anyway?
And, mate, you're talking bricks, right? And I've got mates in the building game. It's the first three things I always tell my boys we need. We need water, right? Very first thing we need in any issue. We need food. We need shelter.
Yeah.
Don't need anything else, boys.
Yeah,
we
was that
can survive.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You know, it's those things, right?
And, mate, but if we've got no food coming in, and we've got no building products, and we've got no fuel, society breaks down. And this was what John Howard and John Anderson, two men who should know, are saying. It's not that we've got 21 days of fuel, but within days of losing our supply chains, within days we'd have society would collapse.
Has your opinion or understanding of the history of conservatism in Australia changed since obviously with your military experience and over time, and the reverence that I saw people holding John Howard and John Anderson, and I have great respect for the both of them as leaders to some degree, but I also see a lot of our problems were created through that 90s into the early 2000s that we're dealing with now under that leadership.
Yeah, mate, I agree. But it's also a bit of in hindsight as well, right? We can sort of look of how things have turned out and judge them as failures. And we need to look back now and try and rectify those problems. And Gerard is right. Gerard wants an Australian bank here owned by the Australians. He wants a public insurance office to try and bring back what we did have.
Yeah.
Now, we've got to identify the failures. We've got to address them and come up with a strategy ahead. No one seems to want to do that. No one wants to admit there is a problem.
Yeah.
And then we can stop making those failures, right? But as you know, mate, you can't fix something till people admit to it. And so it's easy for you and I to say, and Gerard's, like you said before, he's screaming from the rooftop, and it just no one's listening.
Yeah. It was interesting to me to hear Gerard talk about how, you know, he really got into politics and was elected to go to the Senate because of his passion about tax reform. As an accountant with his world of experience, he could see the intrinsic problems within our corporate structure and our bureaucracy when it came to revenue collection and what it was doing to undermine the future wealth of our nation. But he got caught up in the COVID story down there, right? Like COVID kicks off and everything's thrown out the window. We did this extensive Henry tax review. Almost nothing in that's been adopted. You've been through the Royal Commission. How many recommendations were made out of the Royal Commission?
Oh, sorry, mate. 122.
122 recommendations, zero fucking implementation. Zero.
Yeah.
Right? And now you mentioned to me when we spoke last that if you took all the wars that we've been involved in the last 40 years, like what was that statistic?
Mate, all up, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, we've lost way more, thousands more through suicide. They're saying the numbers are around 1,600 who've suicided since 2002, I believe. But that's the official number. That's not ESOs and that are saying and the Royal Commission believes there's a lot more.
Yeah.
So if we say it's 2,000 to 3,000, and you and I are talking, it was 41 lost in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it was actually under 20 in Iraq, and only hundreds in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So how do we? There's a massive problem there right now that we're not addressing. And like you said to Scotty, the homeless veterans out there now, the veterans that
wouldn't
are
even
on
be
the
on
verge.
mate. They wouldn't even be registered with DVA or VET. There'd be nothing there that would identify them in the system because, and I got this from someone who messaged me who was homeless, who said they have no fixed address, so they're not technically counted as homeless because there's nowhere for them to be registered as homeless. They live in their car, moving from car park to car park, and she, with her child, I might add, which was like really hard to read. There's thousands of people, tens of thousands of people like that, and I imagine, as you would too, that there would be a lot more veterans in a really bad way if they haven't suicided already that we wouldn't know about, that wouldn't show up on the records, mate.
Scotty, I talk to people, and a lot of people want to talk to me. It's about, say, climate change or the energy, and I'm like, you're missing the problem right now. Stop. Fix Australia. Fix the Australian people. Let's get everyone out of being homeless. Let's give everyone a roof. Let's make sure everyone can eat. That's my first priority, and that's genuine. That's not political, mate. I've gone and spoke to the farmers. I know what they want in my area. I know what small business wants. I pulled up at the beach, and I've got the People First party on my car. And this gentleman popped his head in the car and he goes, "Thank you for what you do." And I was on the phone. I said, "Hang on, mate. I'd love to have a chat to you." And he goes, "No, no." He's so polite. No, carrying your phone call. I said, "No, mate. I'll come. I want to have a chat." And I hung up. And I get out and I said, "Well, thank you, mate, for coming up. I'm John, and we're talking." And he was so beautiful. I said, "Mate, politically, and what is there any? You follow Gerard, Rennick. What can we do? What do you need in your industry?" He goes, "I need nothing." I said, "Really?" He goes, "No, mate, I'm happy. I just want you to fight for me." I said, "Oh, mate, so are you in my electorate?" He goes, "I can be in any electorate, John. I'm homeless." And mate, it's one of the most surreal things I've seen, right?
He wants nothing.
Nothing.
He's not asking for anything. Just fight for me because I'm homeless.
No, mate, and this is what people don't see, right? We move the homeless on from parks. We do all this.
Yeah.
Let's just stop. And mate, I love the military background. Gives me the opportunity to focus on the mission, right?
Yeah.
And focus on the threat in hand. When we've got homeless people and they're coming up, just work on cost of living. That should be our priority.
Yeah.
Let's dig everyone out, mate. We're a resource-rich nation. People go to me, "Oh, John, you don't believe in climate change." I said, "I've never said that. I've said we've got over 1,300 years of coal by CSIRO reports in 2023 without any further exploration, right? We've got gas, even though Victoria and I think South Australia were importing gas. Makes no sense. let's stop what we're doing. Let's stop spending billions on climate change. We can go back to that if you want, if the science says that down the track. Let's focus on digging everyone out of poverty. And it is getting bad, Scott, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And they're not acknowledging the problem, because I've never once heard Albanese or Chalmers reference the 26,000 small businesses that collapsed in the last 12 months. 3,500 building companies. Like, these are builders, people that build homes. 3,500 of them gone under in 18 months. Not a single word mentioned about them. There's not even a byline in the budget. There's nothing. There's no reference to that. I look at 26,500 small businesses and think about how many families lost their homes, mate, because of that, And so it doesn't even get a reference or a talking point now.
no, mate. And Gerard talks a lot about balance sheets and debt and
Yep.
equity. And
He can actually become quite baffling with that stuff. I feel stupid
very,
talking
mate.
to him sometimes,
But the main thing is we need to increase productivity, right?
Yep.
This is from Gerard's.
And so you got to lower input costs so you can increase productivity. In my mind, that's how I see it.
So, mate, I speak to the local landscapers and stuff. Their tax accountant is telling them you actually make more money if you don't put stuff on. All right. I speak to my local coffee shop guy, and he's got 2 coffee shops, 2 barber shops. And he goes, his accountant says you'll actually make the same amount of money because of payroll tax and earning over that around that 1.3 million if you get rid of 3 of the businesses and keep 1. So this is what people are telling you when you go talk to them. How is that improving?
John's a super cool guy to talk to, and that wraps up part 1 of my interview with him. Part 2 will be released in the next few days. I hope you enjoy this. If you can share it around, it's a great story. I think that a lot of people need to understand what's going on with our government, with our bureaucracy, with our defence force at every single level. Every part of the government that runs this country is broken, and John's story definitely exemplifies that. See you for part 2.